In recent times, the little Arab, Maryam, was raised to the altars, and she is a great hidden saint. Her story is one string of miraculous interventions, almost beyond belief. She was orphaned, and she had one brother, Paul, who by this time had been separated from her. They wanted her to get married, and thus she would be sorted out in life. So her uncle thought that by this she would then be taken good care of. And that was the only future he could conceive for her. Such was the mentality of the times, that patriarchal society. But the Mother of God was watching over the future spouse of her son. So during the night preceding the arranged marriage, of which little Miriam wanted nothing, this was inspired in her, it would seem, by the Madonna. Something that had happened in earlier times, notably St. Catherine of Siena. She had avoided any would-be marriage, cutting her beautiful hair. Miriam understood immediately, and first thing in the morning she cut off her beautiful long hair. It was unthinkable for a Middle Eastern man to marry a woman without hair. That just didn't happen. Disgrace. The next morning, Miriam presented herself like that, without hair, in front of the family and the chosen fiancé. She lifted her veil, and then horror. There she was, without hair, completely bald. Terrible, scandalous. Miriam no longer had hair. As a consequence, she was deemed no longer marriageable. The scheme had worked well. Everyone was shocked. Her uncle fell into a violent state of anger. He beat her until she bled, and Miriam carried the scars from his violent blows on her body. Then she was chased out of the family and found herself assigned as a slave to the slaves. In this family, it happened that several black servants were in the service of the uncle. These servants received the order to treat her badly, to make her do the most difficult jobs in the kitchen, in the garden, and in the fields. And for several months, Miriam was subject to this regime of persecutions and humiliations. Instead of rebelling or lamenting her fate, she took up this new burden with a great deal of joy. She was already so deep in intimacy with the Lord and with the inhabitants of heaven. Although her life was hard on the exterior, Miriam carried her heaven in her heart. That heart was in heaven. She gave witness to a real beatitude. This rough work, this trial of rejection, permitted her to strengthen her ties with God. Months passed in this situation. She was 12, and she still remembered her brother Paul, who lived near Nazareth. She learned that a certain Muslim man had to go to Nazareth. So she went to his house to entrust him with a message to carry to her brother Paul. That day she was saying her goodbye to this Muslim family, which lived very near to her own village. Following the local tradition, they said to her, "Now listen, stay and have dinner with us. You can't leave already." In the Middle East, you can't refuse an invitation. It's part of their code of hospitality. So she accepted the offer. Since she had suffered some rather severe abuse, people could see on her body evidence of beatings. During the course of the meal, the Muslim said to her, "Oh sure, the Christian religion, you see what a state it has put you in. These people are wicked. You ought to become a Muslim, and then truly renounce your Christian faith." No, I'm holding on to my Christian faith. I'm Catholic, and I honestly hope to die in my Catholic faith, which is the only true one. Then, faced with the resistance of this little slip of a girl who was only a child, and of another religion besides, the Muslim went into a rage. He kicked Maryam. The little girl's chest was damaged, and she was thrown to the ground. Then he took his scimitar and cut her throat. The wound was fatal. So his wife and he decided to get rid of the body quickly, and under the cover of darkness, like villainous thieves, they took her body and threw it in a remote place, a sort of natural grotto. There they abandoned her and returned to their home as if nothing had happened. It was the night of the 7th or 8th of September 1858. That's the year that Our Lady came to Lourdes. So, what was to become of little Miriam? We could say that she had suffered martyrdom. She had professed her Christian faith, and because of her faith, she had shed her blood. It must be noted here that when she was younger, in an outburst of love for the Lord, she had asked for the grace to shed her blood for her faith. She was actually impatient to shed her blood for Jesus. The Lord had made her wait several years, but he had granted her prayer. So her body was abandoned in the darkness of this grotto, of this squalid little cave on the outskirts of Alexandria? Would the animals come to devour her? No, the story doesn't stop there. Something very mysterious was going to happen to this young adolescent. An incredible event. Years later, she would tell Father Estrat, the spiritual director, that she went up to heaven and that there she had a vision of God, a vision of the Blessed Trinity. She saw Jesus Christ in his humanity. She saw the throne of God. She saw the Most Blessed Virgin Mary, who was standing near the throne of the Lord in all the splendor of her glory. She saw the angels of God. She also saw the souls of the saints. She was immersed in a great, immense beatitude. In this happiness with no name that she could never really describe with her poor words, because she said it was indescribable. Yet, in the midst of this beatitude, someone approached her and said, "Miriam, your book is not finished. You are going to return to us." Without knowing how, she woke up. She realized that she was in a grotto, and in the grotto a woman came up to her. Her clothing was totally unrecognizable to Miriam, very much like the habit of a nun. It was a magnificent blue color. The lady simply stood there. She had an extraordinary gentleness about her, and her presence delighted the heart of Miriam. Then the woman began to stitch up her neck, to care for her, to bandage her, to put ointments on her wound. The lady hardly spoke. Every day she appeared next to Miriam and cared for her like a good nurse. A profound, loving relationship was established then and there between Miriam and the mysterious nun, apparently. And then one day, Miriam began to feel her strength coming back. This lady had brought her very special food, something she had never seen. Miriam would say later it was a soup, but not a normal soup. It was a deliciously good soup. So she ate this soup with pleasure and asked for more. It was so good. And then, as children do in front of delicious food, she said to the lady, "More." At that moment, for the first time, the lady let her voice be heard and said, "Miriam, no, that's enough for the moment." She didn't want to give her any more of that soup. She seems to have used this request of Miriam to reach to her heart and to teach her a little lesson. We know by what happened next day that this lady This mysterious nun was none other than the Blessed Virgin Mary. Let us listen very carefully to what she told her. Remember, Maryam, don't act like other people who think they never have enough. Say always, that's enough. Always be content, in spite of what you may have to suffer. Then the Virgin revealed to her that she would have to suffer a great deal in her life. She insisted, always be content. The Lord, who is good, will send you all you need. She explained to her that in her life she must welcome everything as coming from the hand of God, and that she must give thanks for every detail of her life. So this was to colour the rest of her days profoundly. This always be content would form the foundation of her personal happiness and the framework of her consecrated life. Those words were golden. She would take them literally. There is nothing I shall want. Everything that happened to her throughout the course of her life, she would accept from that day on as coming from God. This attitude of the heart that she chose to pursue radically would make her the happiest of women. She knew from that day forward that everything came from the hand of God. Whatever event presented itself, she didn't worry. On the contrary, she kissed the hand of God even before noticing what was happening to her. Everything worked to the good in her eyes, so that she might take giant steps in faith and trust. In this way, she would seize the great happiness God offered in every situation, even the ones that seemed to be the worst. She made then the right choice. This is parallel to teaching given through and in the heart of another great recent saint, Martyrdom, I believe not yet canonized. I'm not sure if she's yet beatified. She died in 1981. I see so clearly how much his adorable will is realized in everything, even in what is not wanted by him, that I can only contemplate and adore in silence. What does that mean? Well, God loves us so much that when something bad happens, which is not his will, consequence of sin, he is powerful enough to bring good out of evil itself. In his almighty providence, he can draw good from the consequences of an evil. It's what we see in the life of Simon Peter, or Thomas, the doubting Thomas. It's also the spirituality and teaching given to our English mystic, Blessed Julian of Norwich. Providence. God draws good and readdresses things, redresses the balance, and all shall be well. She insists that she was given to understand that there is nothing that happens on earth without divine permission, and that it is pulled towards good. It echoes the teaching that we find in Romans 8:28. All things work together for good for those who love God. She had all the mystical gifts, she was stigmatized, and she was an instrument in founding monasteries. Indeed, the Lord personally became the architect of the monastery that he wanted in Bethlehem. It was over the very place where David had kept his sheep, and I believe was actually anointed by the prophet Samuel. But under the monastery there is that area where one can visit, where actually David kept his sheep. And the Lord wanted it built in a circular form to represent the Tower of David, one of the titles that Our Lady has in the litany. All the windows had to look upwards, so the nuns would be gazing upwards rather than downwards, towards the skies and not towards the earth. The Lord wanted a certain noble simplicity, and when the local workers started to add things in their style, he immediately through her corrected them. And there was also a promise that the monastery would never be destroyed. One day she was carrying 2 large buckets of water on both sides, balanced on her shoulder, and she suddenly fell and was wounded on the sharp stones. It became gangrene and she died at the age of 32. And she is powerful now in glory to be invoked. A pearl, a gem for our times in a troubled land. The Holy Land, close to Jerusalem, vision of peace, lamented by the Lord, for it never knew what pertained to its peace. Many things came through her, and one thing that she requested on behalf of the Lord directly to the Holy Father was that there should be a monthly Mass offered by every priest in honour of the Holy Ghost. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.